Hi, and welcome to Week 10, Assessing and Differentiating for Multilingual Learners and Students with Disabilities. Both of the topics for this week could be entire courses in their own right. So we're covering a lot of ground in 1 week, but as there's interrelation between assessing and differentiating, I decided to tackle them together here as we think about how we can support students on an individual level to make sure that they have what they need to be successful, and also have a sense for how students are progressing and what students are learning and what they're able to do, so that we can continue to design targeted instruction for our students. You'll also see that we're talking both about multilingual learners and a little bit about students with disabilities today, not because I'm suggesting that those terms are equated or should be equated. Certainly, we know that multilingual learners and students with disabilities have different needs. And while those groups sometimes overlap, we know that they are distinct. And yet many of the same strategies that you would use to differentiate for multilingual learners are also effective when you're differentiating for students with disabilities. So I'll talk a little bit about that this week as well. All right, so in terms of content, you're going to begin by reading 3 chapters from Margot Gottlieb's book, Assessing English Language Learners. This text is a fantastic resource. So while you're just reading 3 chapters for this course, I do encourage you to consider purchasing the entire book. I think it's very useful for classroom educators. But for this week, we'll be looking at an overview chapter where she introduces this idea of assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. And so you'll learn about the distinction between those 3 ideas and go deeper into assessment as learning and assessment for learning as a way to think about the role of students and teachers in assessing and different types of formative and summative assessments that you could use in your own classroom. So after you engage with the reading, and then after that, we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about strategies. So we'll watch a video of 2 high school teachers talking about how they differentiate for their multilingual learners. I have a mini lecture video where I share some of the strategies that I found effective, especially focused on reading comprehension and differentiating for students, and also thinking about how we can take texts and adapt them or amplify them to make them more accessible for students. I've shared some resources that I think are particularly helpful in this area, such as Newsela and Common Lit, and a new one that I discovered that's an AI resource that I haven't used that much yet, but looks very promising, called Diffit, which is an AI tool that can modify texts at different levels and in different languages. So there's no shortage of resources now to support teachers in making sure that texts are accessible for all of their students. You'll also see a resource looking at assistive technology, which is a really useful tool for supporting students who struggle with reading. So assistive technology is generally talked about in relation to students, supporting students who have dyslexia, but also I think some of the tools such as text-to-speech technology would also benefit any student who is struggling with reading, including multilingual learners who might benefit from text-to-speech technology. So you'll see, again, some more resources there. After we've engaged in some conceptual understanding of assessment and talked about a wide range of resources, we'll move into differentiating with the WIDA MPI strand as a tool that can help you think about how to differentiate students who are at different stages of second language acquisition. So we'll begin that section of this week with a review of what are the stages, in case it's been a while since you've reviewed this yourself, or in case it's new-ish to you. So I have a video that I've included that shows the stages and just a brief slide overview of those 5 stages, along with a handout that I've created. So with that in mind, you'll learn how to use the WIDA 2012 MPI strands to help you differentiate for multilingual learners. I'm going to spend a little bit of time pointing out the difference between WIDA's 2012 tool and WIDA's 2020 tool, because the 2020 WIDA framework really is a set of standards, and we've engaged with them a little bit already, but the 2012 what the model performance indicator strands are really a differentiation tool. They help you think about how at different levels of second language acquisition, how you might ensure that all students can still reach the same objective, even if they're showing how they're reaching, or even if they're reaching that objective, using language in different ways, right? So while one student might show you that they can identify differences between things that are hot and things that are cold by sorting them, and maybe using single words to name them. Another student might be able to do a sorting exercise like that using complete sentences, or completing a graphic organizer where they're writing with complete sentences. So it helps you to think about how you might still have the same overarching content goal for your students, but you might differentiate the language that students are using or required to use to be able to engage with that standard. So you'll be able to watch a video where I go into that in more detail. And then for your discussing and applying section for this week, you're going to be deconstructing an MPI strand, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be choosing an MPI strand that's at your grade level, or in the area that you teach, and just kind of breaking it apart, thinking about what those different components are and how that might be a useful tool for you to use in your own teaching as you think about differentiating for MLLs. And so you'll be uploading your deconstructed strand for the discussion board and talking a little bit about assessing and differentiating. And finally, you'll see there's some additional resources that I've provided from WIDA for any of you who are teaching in early childhood context, or any of you who teach in Spanish. There's a few other resources that WIDA has created to help you think about supporting multilingual learners and differentiating. So as you wrap up this week, do keep in mind where we're headed for next week. So next week, we'll be focusing on the lesson and materials adaptation assignment. You won't have any readings because you'll be focusing specifically on that project, where you'll be taking everything that we've been learning so far to adapt a lesson to make it more responsive for MLLs. So as you're beginning to think about that assignment, I encourage you to review the rubric and assignment description and to start thinking about what lesson you might want to adapt, especially keeping in mind assessing and differentiating. Is there a lesson that you taught recently or that's coming up, or a lesson that you've been introduced to at some point in your teacher preparation program, if you're a pre-service teacher, that you might be able to adapt and make more responsive. So that is our week. I look forward to engaging with you on the discussion board and reading your reflections as you engage with new learning around assessing and differentiating for multilingual learners.